Hello, everyone. My name is Margaret Keane, and I am the Education Training and Development Officer here at Midwest ARIES. Delighted to have you join us today for our webinar in partnership with Mental Health Ireland. And today we're going to be talking about that tricky subject of doom scrolling. What is it? And why is it bad for our mental health? For those of you who aren't familiar with Midwest ARIES, maybe you've come across us on Eventbrite. We are the recovery education service here based in the Midwest. We are part of the mental health service here. So we're a fully hybrid service. So we provide a range of inspirational, inclusive, and I'd also say transformative learning opportunities for people who want to learn about how they can support their mental health and in particular their recovery from mental health challenges. So that's what we do. But as I said, today we're going to be looking at doom scrolling. It should be a really interesting conversation. It's something actually when we talked about it and we started talking about what are we going to do for this webinar, we came up with this idea and we thought, God, yeah, that's interesting. We really didn't realize how interesting it was to people, and this is probably one of our people have signed, loads of people have signed up for this. So yeah, really, really interesting. It's obviously caught the imagination. So listen, let's get into it. Just before that, a little bit of housekeeping in terms of what we're doing today. So we're going to be here for about an hour. As usual, what we want to try and do is have a really engaging conversation, and that means you have a part to play as well. So you can submit a question or even just a reflection on what we're discussing through the Q&A button, which is there on your navigation bar. It's probably at the bottom of your screen. Looks slightly different for me. It's up on the top, but have a look at the bottom and it'll say Q&A. Pop in your question there, as I said, or just a reflection or something you want to share with the group. The chat function is disabled, but we'll be able to send you chats direct. And I'd encourage our panelists, if there's something they want to share, put it in the chat. So if we don't actually get to it. It is recorded, and you'll probably notice that. And we like to do that and share it on our YouTube channel, but also it's available as a long form podcast on Spotify and Apple. Literally wherever you get a podcast, you'll be able to find us there. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm just going to ask the panelists if they could start their videos so we can see these lovely people. And I'll do just a very quick, I suppose, tell you who we've got with us today. And I'll just start from whoever's on the screen first. And we have Mags Clifford, who is a recovery education facilitator with Midwest ARIES. We have Eileen Hanley, who is another one of our wonderful facilitators here at Midwest ARIES. We have Mike O'Neill, and again, anybody who's come to our webinars, I don't think Mike has missed one, but delighted to have him here because I know he's very busy. And finally, Niamh Lowe. Niamh is a great supporter of Midwest ARIES, and we're very grateful for that. She is a senior psychologist here in HSE Midwest Community Healthcare. So, right, let's get started. So, I'm actually going to just get all your voices going, get your voice in the room. So I'm going to start with you, Mike. Just a little brief introduction about you, your role, and maybe just a little taster of today and what you're expecting from the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Yeah, I'm the manager of this recovery education service here at Midwest ARIES. And what I really like about this panel discussion today is that it is having apart from the title, but I suppose the engagement process is slightly different because we're nailing our colours to the mast with this one, because we're saying doom scrolling, what is it? And why is it bad for our mental health? And we had that debate here before we came up with the title where we're saying, what is it? And is it bad for our mental health? And that would be the normal approach we would take here. But on this one, having debated it, we've come up with where, yes, we're saying it is bad for our mental health. So, yeah. Thanks,
and
Margaret.
thanks, Mike. Absolutely. And I think we've made the right decision. Well, we'll see at the end of it. We'll redress that, but I think we have. And with that in mind, Niamh, if you just want to just say hi to everybody.
I'm going to keep forgetting to unmute myself. Hi, I'm Niamh. I'm a psychologist working in adult mental health. And I am qualified 6 years, I think, and mostly I've been working in the area of adults. I spent a few years working with children and adolescents. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the discussion today. And I guess, yeah, when I read the title of the webinar, I was interested to hear it being discussed and also add to that. And I guess it's something in my own life that I notice like a very strong draw to scroll. And also it just comes up in the room when I'm working, doing therapy with people. It's something that contributes to mental health difficulties. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
That's great, Niamh, and that's brilliant having you here from that kind of clinical perspective, because if you're seeing that, in your your consultations, it'd be really interesting to see how prevalent it is, perhaps. But we'll dig a little bit deeper into that as we go on. Eileen, do you want to say hi?
Hi everybody, my name is Eileen. I'm a recovery education facilitator with Midwest ARIES. So yeah, like everybody, I'm looking forward to today. I'm definitely guilty of spending too much time on favorite platforms. So I suppose it's also a reminder kind of in researching for today, I suppose about my own habits and kind of looking at habits and I suppose looking at the impact those habits can have, sometimes good, sometimes bad. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to discussion as well today, Margaret, just to see what everybody else thinks and maybe have one of those aha moments. So thanks a million, Margaret.
Thanks, Eileen. And a couple of things. Number one, let's all just be honest about this. Let's just ban the word guilt or guilty today, because I think we all have skin in the game here and probably have indulged in some form of this at some point. But and I think it's great, as you said, the aha moments. Certainly, when we were talking about this at our team meeting earlier in the week, lots of us had those aha moments. It's like anything when somebody points something out to you, you kind of go, okay, yeah, I know what that is. I do that. But yeah, Mags, have you had a aha moment? Say hello.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Yeah, I'm also a recovery education facilitator with ARIES, and I did actually have one of those moments because I had got a new phone a few weeks ago, and this thing used to come up on a Monday morning, a beep, and I always thought it was maybe how much exercise you did during the week or steps, and it was actually how much time you spent on your phone. And I suppose I got a bit of a shock because I thought I was out and about one week and I said there wouldn't be much on it. And I think when I saw how many hours I spent on it, the awareness is really, really after coming in now. So yeah, it's a very interesting subject to be talking about. Yeah.
And thanks, Mags, for sharing that. And I think you've nailed it there. Awareness. When you're aware of what you do, you can actually make positive changes around that. So it'll be I think it's going to be really, really interesting conversation. So with that in mind, let's start by trying to get an idea or an understanding or a definition of the term doom scrolling. And I've also seen it being dooms surfing, sorry, is another word that they can use for it. And I'll start because, again, a bit like yourself, I was kind of looking around in terms of, well, what kind of evidence-based stuff is out there? How did this actually come about? Where did this term come from? And I'll start with the definition from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. And they define it as to spend excessive time online scrolling through news or other content that makes you feel sad, anxious, or angry. And the first known use of the word was 2020. So this is a baby word, I was obviously around the pandemic. And actually in 2020, the Oxford English Dictionary made it one of their words of the year. So it kind of makes sense there. We were looking for information online, and obviously there was a lot of negative news stories. So you can kind of understand where it came from. But it's a new word. But do you think it's a new behavior? Like, is this linked in some way to, evolution and how we, experience the world and trying to get information about to keep us protected from certain things? I don't know who wants to come in on that first, but that idea of it's not just a word, it's a behavior. And I think, Niamh, are you coming in on that?
Yeah, I was going to, yeah. And I guess myself as well, it's something that I do see in my work a lot, and it's also something I notice in myself and my own behavior. And like you said, there's an understanding, or we all have a kind of a sense that this isn't good for us, or this affects us negatively, but at the same time we're drawn to do it, and we're, you know, we can lose so much time just kind of going down a rabbit hole. So yeah, and I think what you're saying, is it a new behavior? I don't think so. Like, it's, you know, like when you described, or you said evolution, it seems to be, I think that's the most kind of sense we can make of it, is it's an evolutionary behavior. Like, we're drawn to kind of be vigilant, be aware of, attuned to the bad, the potentially dangerous, threatening, because, you know, back in cave person times, it was, you know, life or death. We needed to be aware, we needed to be attuned to danger, and we needed to know what was going on. And if we didn't, if we were a bit more tuned into, you know, oh, the sun on my face, or the sound of the trees, or the sound of the birds, we probably wouldn't survive, and therefore our genes and our DNA wouldn't pass down. So we needed to be attuned to kind of keeping up with what's potentially dangerous. And I suppose now, in the time when there is smartphones and there is a 24-hour news cycle, and like just constant access to finding out more and more about kind of, what's out there, what's dangerous, or what's potentially threatening, we're drawn to that. So I suppose my perspective, and kind of thinking about, you know, the research that's there, it's a new word, but it maybe is a behavior that's been around for forever.
And I think that's really interesting, Niamh, and gives a wee bit of comfort, you know, because obviously as a recovery education service, it's all about learning and understanding. And I suppose when you kind of have an understanding of why you do what you do, hopefully then you can kind of, you know, adjust, or, you know, make, as I said, positive changes.
Well, what's, I don't know, comforting for me to think about it is, it's like it's the brain's way of trying to keep you safe. So like, it's you know, it's like my brain is trying to help me, trying to protect me. Okay, maybe it's going about it in the wrong way, and it might be having negative impacts, but really, if you kind of understand and dig down into why I'm doing it, kind of comes from a place of protection or survival or safety, which can, you know, can be a bit of a comfort, kind of understanding it a little bit. Yeah.
I think so, because then it's just not a mindless activity that you finally, it feels that way, but actually there's some kind of possibly evolutionary purpose, or something that's linked to that kind of protection. Does anyone else, Mike, for instance, or Eileen, want to come in on that?
If I could come in on that, and I suppose I'm probably the exception here, because I don't use social media. And I suppose, as Niamh said, it's around being aware of what's happening, what's out there. And I think in early days, and I'm going back to 9/11, when we had 24-hour news channels, they were relatively new at the time. And I can remember watching the horror of the Twin Towers endlessly. And after a week, I had to say, I can't do this anymore. So in the same way, I suppose I made the decision is, if I'm going to use social media, how is it going to help me? What are the benefits? And I think the minefield in there, while I think, yes, Niamh is correct, but what we're looking at, if you could break it down into two things, and again, this is only my opinion, is that on social media, you know, or you have, I think it's based mainly on, it's targeting people's feelings. Whereas if I go on the internet looking for information about something, which I do, you know, I'm actually looking for facts. And I think it's the muddying of the waters of what we're observing. I'm making this assumption because I don't, but I can see where it's happened in the news, where you have crowd and mob mentality that are, you know, linked into you know, oh, this is all happening because of social media and what's being communicated on it. But if I'm feeling, coming back to the caveman or the cave person thing of, well, I'm being threatened, I'm being attacked, I don't feel safe, who are like xenophobia, all of these things, there's none of them based on fact. They're all based on feelings. And that's what creates then the hypervigilance and arousal, that I must keep looking. I need to feel safe, you know. But I think the platforms there and the way they're constructed and the way people use them, they're not using facts, they're using feelings.
I think that's really interesting, Mike, and obviously gives a wider discussion in terms of news media and how we consume news, and separating out, as you said, the facts from the feelings, which is always tricky to do in any kind of context. But yeah, thanks for that. There's a lot to kind of unpack there. So thanks for sharing that. And again, I just say to the people listening or, you know, viewing the webinar, you know, put into the Q&A there, maybe you've a response to that or a question around that area. Eileen, I might come to you in terms of that then, in terms of that behavior piece. I mean, does that ring true to you in terms of social media? I suppose if we're kind of agreeing, and we might not, that this is something maybe that's happened before us, to go back to the original question, that this is basically you know, a behavior that's inbuilt. Is it the fact that social media is built around algorithms that they want you to engage constantly, they're feeding it, and is that your experience of it?
Yeah, sorry, definitely, Margaret. I suppose I was thinking actually that the biggest presentation we see in most of our workshops is anxiety, and that's the number one kind of presentation of kind of mental health referrals, you know, and has been, well, even pre-pandemic, but definitely since the pandemic. And when you think about anxiety and then social media, someone, you know, I would have identified as always being an anxious person, but you know, the responses, the fight, flight, freeze, fix, or fawn. And I think people go on to social media trying to kind of alleviate, you know, I suppose the first three as well. But when you think they're looking for answers, they're looking, trying to fix something, or they're also looking for communities. And I feel like I've done the same with those, but generally I'm left feeling empty after the interactions. That, because I think before, you know, you're just chatting about behaviors and how things have changed. Before, if you were fearful, if there was something going on, you speak to someone, or you were in groups or in communities, so you could have those conversations, where now you're online communities, and that can just feel empty. I suppose, just to give you an example, a few weeks ago, I was on a kind of a silent retreat for a few days, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to delete my social media accounts, and I did. And I found after 3 days, I had to sign up to something, but I had to sign up through this platform. Then everything, even though I was trying to disconnect, kept drawing me back into kind of the main platforms. I won't even say them because I get so much advertising anyway. And I thought, oh my God, I'm making a real effort here to change my behaviors and disconnect, but I'm still getting brought in, whether it's banking or whether it's even, you know, topics I'm interested in, mental health or environment. You're still drawn back into those kind of conversations through social media. And it, you know, I definitely saw my own behavior trying to disconnect has changed. So, and we definitely see it in our workshops, that you can't beat that face to face, coming together, having conversations, and even using online, like for having kind of uplifting conversations about well-being and having real conversations. So yes, there definitely has been a behavior shift, Mark, and I do think definitely social media has an impact. And I know we're probably going to talk a little bit more about what we can do about that. But yeah, I just wanted to add those 2 points. So,
and I think they're really good, Eileen, and it's that idea of, we're so connected through technology at the minute, but yet there is a disconnect and people are feeling alone. I mean, there's, in terms of loneliness, you know, the numbers feeling lonely, but that idea of trying to find, I suppose it's trying to find your tribe, trying to find your community, and people are really busy now, you know, whereas like in the olden days when I was young. Like people just, we allowed ourselves to get bored, and I think we kind of reject boredom now as something, that it's a discomfort. So you're kind of finding other ways. I do want to come to the audience here, and thank you so much. I've got a couple of questions I just want to put to you. One, Liz was just saying, I think people are listening to, and this speaks to your point, I think, Mike, I think people are listening to influencers over scientific facts since we have so many social media platforms. And definitely, I think that's true. And it's funny, when I was looking at the doom scrolling piece, it was focusing on that compulsion to look at negative news stories to almost, confirm how bad things were. But I think alternatively, there is that thing of looking at, maybe a really positive story with an influencer, but actually you might feel negative after that because it might make you feel less than. So sorry, Mike, do you want to come in there?
Can I just come in on that again? Because again, coincidentally, when I mentioned that we were having a little debate around the title, when we agreed on the title, the next day in the New York Times, 17th of June just gone. And I'm just going to read this out of the newspaper. It says, the US Surgeon General wants all social media platforms to have a tobacco-style warning label notifying users that they are associated with significant mental health harms for adolescents. It goes on to say the Surgeon General wrote in the New York Times about the dangers of young people using social media too often and for too long and at too young an age. He pointed to several studies, so this is the evidence-based research, that shows a correlation between mental health harms such as anxiety or depression and time spent on social media. So I don't think there's a difference between, an adolescent or an adult, because we're all people. So, and again, it was just coincidentally, this was the next day in the New York Times. So it's just that little bit of evidence that's there.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense in terms of those social media algorithms, Mike. There's been plenty of evidence that would suggest that that they promote that kind of addictive behavior in terms of the pinging, the notifications coming in, engaging you. It's a bit like, as Eileen said, she found it extremely difficult to come off social media because it was so much is there now in terms of communities that you want to engage with, and 9 times out of 10, even when you're signing up for something, sometimes it won't allow you to sign up by your email. You have to go through a platform. There's a question there I want to definitely come to because I think it's a really interesting one. But Mags, I just want, before we move on from this, do you have any perspective on this that you want to add? And then I'll just come to that question that's in the chat or in the Q&A.
Yeah, I suppose we look at social media and it has its good points and it has its bad points. It's just the negativity. We can, you'll read something and you might pass it over, but it's got in. It's definitely got in. It's in there, and it could, something else could happen during the day, and you could just think back on it. And I suppose especially with the wars going around the world, all that's being fed in as well. And I've kind of come to the conclusion at this stage, you don't know who's telling the truth or who's not telling the truth. And it's kind of what you can soak up then and what you take in. And I suppose this was a bit of an eye-opener for me, all right. So I really have, I'm starting to tone down my time on my phone, on the social media. I was at a house yesterday evening, and I just had to leave some dogs out, and usually I'd sit in the kitchen with the phone, but it was such a nice evening. I went out and I left the phone in the kitchen and I sat outside for half an hour, and I was there, all right, and I was wondering what, I'll have to look around, I'll have to look for something. But I was just taking in my environment. But it's yeah, I'm aware now, but it wasn't until I was kind of, I suppose, learned that it is there. Like, you do spend an awful lot of time on your phone.
And Mags, I just want to thank you for being so honest about that, because you're not alone. All of us here have done that at various stages, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on social media apps. It could be news apps. It could be, you know, yeah. And I suppose the question is, where you're getting your news from. There are all these voices coming in, particularly at the moment with everything that's happening in the world. It's very difficult to kind of pull out, you know, what are the important ones. But yeah, I just want to come to the Q&A now. This is an interesting one. And again, it's kind of moving away from kind of social media to dating apps. And and obviously swipe, is it swipe right? I don't know. I'm not in that I'm not in that milieu. I'm, you know, it's not for me, but it just seems to be, going to your point, Eileen, in terms of like those apps are built in now to how people connect, both socially and romantically. So in terms of doom scrolling, so would this be the same for dating apps, you know, around in terms of doom scrolling, boredom, anxiety? You know, if you're not in a relationship and you're looking, you know, I'm sure you could spend, I don't know, Niamh, if that's something that's come up in a clinical setting, or anybody else who wants to come in.
I'm just trying to think. It depends, I suppose, kind of what emotion you're experiencing when you're, you know, engaging in whatever scrolling, whether it's like dating apps or whether it's social media or news, or like if you, I guess the important thing is tuning into yourself a little bit and kind of being mindful of how it's impacting you, because it is going to be impacting you, you know. So whenever we engage in something, it has an influence over how we feel. So I suppose if the dating app, if you're coming away noticing that you're kind of starting to feel a little bit more anxious or a little bit low or empty, or you might be excited, or you might be relieved, or it might be easing boredom, or, you know, it might be a kind of a neutral feeling, but just, I suppose, tuning into that. And I do know, particularly if someone is very conscious and might be conscious of the fact that they're single or they want to be in a relationship, and sometimes spending a very long time on dating apps can kind of reinforce that feeling of loneliness or hopelessness, or if it's having that impact on you, you know, maybe limiting time that we're doing that behavior is important. And I guess, you know, nothing is good or bad. Yeah, well, it is. But like I say, you know, when they doom scrolling, or, you know, engaging in dating apps or engaging in news apps, it's not bad to do that or to do those things. But I guess it's important to tune into how it's impacting your emotions. So if you're coming away feeling a certain way, just be mindful of that, and maybe it's changing how much time you spend on it, or yeah.
And I think, Niamh, and thanks for taking that, because obviously maybe for that person that's something that they, you know, it's important for them. But again, it goes back to that community, loneliness, you know, boredom, which is interesting, you know, that phrase has been used. Again, I just want to come back to some feedback in the Q&A. Ryan says, isn't scrolling related to the dopamine hit associated with finding something which you're interested in or like? Which is interesting. And yeah, like obviously in terms of those algorithms, they're made to make you seek more and go deeper in, and it's all about getting you to a place where they want you to be and to stay there. Liz just wants to share that it saddens her to see very young primary school attendees using iPads instead of pen and paper. Spelling is taking a bashing since mobile phones have taken off too. However, the internet has made learning in third level easier, but I do feel it's taken over our lives instead of just helping us with work. Balance is required, and like substance use, social platforms are addictive, and it's kind of what we're talking about at the moment. And again, if anybody wants to kind of come in on that, I just want to go to a couple more. And thank you so much, guys, for putting getting all this feedback. Ryan says, so people are seeking the hit, and people who are more anxious in a place of distress will scroll more. So there is a correlation of scrolling and anxiety, but the scrolling is not a cause of anxiety. However, it would potentially add to anxiety if used incorrectly. And it's a bit like what you were saying, Niamh, there, in terms of it's not good or bad, but it's I suppose it's the intention and the impact at the end of it. Do you want to come in on that, Niamh, or
Well, I was just agreeing with you, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing, and was it Ryan that you said the name?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of idea that it can reinforce anxiety, or that confirmation bias, kind of, we'll go seeking stories that confirm our beliefs or our emotions, or that. So if we're feeling anxious, or we're feeling down, we're feeling hopeless about the world or about humanity or whatever it is, we might be more drawn to, or we might pay more attention to headlines that kind of confirm that viewpoint, which then is going to provide further evidence for that feeling, which it's kind of vicious cycle, which kind of may exacerbate our anxiety.
And what's it? There's a bit there I forgot to mention, because this is the hopeful bit, and thanks, Ryan. We always like having a bit of hopeful bit. Is however, it can have a positive effect as well to create happy thoughts. So it is that kind of balance. I'm going to come to you next, Mike, but I just want to check this last comment from an anonymous attendee. I think with social media, an individual may put up a post, and if nobody engages with their posts by liking, commenting, sharing, this can result in the individual feeling negative, so ignored, that their post isn't interesting, etc. And I feel that's not healthy for the individual in the long term. I think they're all really, again, it points to just looking for connection. Mike, I'm just going to come to you now, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all of those comments there. And again, and I suppose if we look at, I suppose, the way technology has evolved, we make assumptions that technology is better, and it reminds me, I remember reading about NASA back in the late 60s. They put out a tender for somebody, and they offered $1 million. Bear in mind, this was the late 60s. Could somebody invent a pen that when the spacemen, the astronauts, are up in space, where they could write upside down where there was no gravity? And that's what NASA did. The Russians used pencils. So there's always this thing of that this is, somehow the latest technology somehow is enhancing it. And I think there was one of the comments, I'm not sure it was Ryan or Liz there, that they put in the word addictive. And that's the piece where it can become harmful. Who's in control here? So like, what's the need? And I remember speaking to someone, it could be Margaret there recently, and this was it was actually pre-COVID, but it was out in a restaurant, and there was a family sitting at the table, 2 parents, 4 children, and not one mobile device between them. And I felt like going over, but I didn't want to intrude, because I felt like saying, good on you. The skills that you're teaching your children here around social interaction, to be able to sit with boredom, and whatever that looks like, and to appreciate the people who are around you, the food that you're going to eat. And like, for the duration of the meal, there wasn't a peep out of them, and yet, like, I've seen it so many times, and I get the shudders when I see phones and different things being put in front of children, and I think, like, kind of, how is this helping? But I think it does come back to there's personality types out there. And I think the algorithms and the way these things are structured, and this is me, where I'm putting my paranoia to good use. Why is this being done? Who's in charge of it, and to what end? It's to make money. It's to sell advertising, whether an influencer or anything else. This is big business. They're not doing us any favors. It's like, I'm sitting here, and I'm going to show, look, that's cash. I don't use my, bank card unless I have to, because I'm in control all of the time, and whether that's paranoia or not. And there's probably somewhere between me and the extreme of somebody who is addicted to social media. And it's getting that, how we use technology and finding that balance. But I'm at one end of the extreme, and quite happy there, because I'm in charge. you know.
And I think that we all have different, I suppose, coping strategies in terms of how we negotiate our environment, the people around us. And yeah, but I suppose, as Niamh was saying, it's all kind of all about balance, isn't it, really? You know, like every technological advancement, whether it's the printing press, you know, computers, social media, they've all brought challenges. AI now is the next big thing, and deep fakes and all of that, and how we negotiate that. So sometimes when all of these big changes happen, we kind of need to strip it back. But is it just a fact that human beings we're a little bit gossip hounds, you know? Is it as simple as that? Does anyone want to come in on that?
I will just on that when you said, so did you say gossip hound?
I did, and I don't know whether that's just, you know what I mean? We love
I just had the expression before. But yeah, no, we are. And again, I'm probably overly linking it back to evolutionarily, but like it was, you know, we lived in communities. We had to, for survival, know who not to go to, who not to approach, you know. Oh, you go this way to get to the well, it's safer than going this other way. You know, we were like, it's, I suppose we're programmed, or it was for our survival, to be gossips, you know, or be interested in that, pay attention to that, go seeking that, you know. So I do think it's part of our makeup, and again, not good or bad, but it is just having awareness of that and noticing when it does start to negatively impact us. So again, it's kind of coming back to just being aware how we're being affected by what we're engaging in.
So just following up on that, and in terms of I suppose for all of you, I don't know who wants to come in on this, but so, and Mags has done a great idea. Like, it's brilliant, Mags. It's perfect, because right now you've had that light bulb moment and you've taken action. But when does it get so bad? You know, when do we, like, you had that moment, Mags, where you could see it visually, you know, you couldn't believe it. I thought I was doing 10 hours and it was something else, or whatever it was. But when do we actually, first, I suppose the question is, when do we need to take action, and how can we take action? So does anyone want to come in on that? So just to give, you know, some kind of, Mags has given, I think, a great roadmap of how she's literally taken action now, and she's making conscious decisions with that awareness. Mags, how does that feel, Mags, to be doing that now? Does it feel good, or is it feeling, oh, do you know, I missed my phone?
No, actually, because I know my phone is alongside me, but I'm not using it. But I know now, because I did lose my phone a few weeks ago, and God, it was like, I did, I did, I had a panic attack over it. I had left it in a taxi, but I got it back. But that will tell you how they're so set with you, like that you're bonded to your phone. So, but now it's, every time I pick it up now, I actually feel this little bit of guilt. No, you don't need to look up anything. You're only wasting your time. Put it back down. And when I did need to look up something, then I said, yeah, I'm doing something constructive. I need to look up the price of something, or I need to find something. So that was more, I suppose, making a constructive thing out of it. But I did put a set of 10 hours on my phone from now on. You go into your settings. I had to look it up then. You go into your settings, you go into digital well-being. It's down there on your phone. And you put in how many hours that you'd like to spend a week on the phone. Now I was reduced by a third, so we'll see what will happen. But I'm very, very conscious now of, because I could be sitting down, put on a movie, sit down, and the next thing you see, the thing is over at the television. But I've never looked at the movie because I was on my phone. It's this kind of a thing. And if you get used to that, and you just kind of do it, but it's just a change to change it. And somebody always said, that used to come on to our workshops, you can pick up a good habit as bad as you can pick up a bad habit. So it's just about change and being aware, I think. So yeah, it will be interesting.
I love that idea of the fact that you can make definite changes. And I want to lean a little bit more into, because in terms of the people listening, what should you need to look out for? you know, or do you know yourself, like, you know, I'm a little bit too much on this, or I'm seeking out that kind of confirmation bias of the same kind of negative stories all the time? How do you stop that? How do you stop that if it's built into, I wake up in the morning and my phone, you know, it's probably on all night anyway. Eileen, great, thank you.
I was just thinking, Margaret, there's something I did was had a practice of not using the phone on a Sunday. So I suppose like Mags was talking there about, you know, kind of changing, and it takes time to change habits. I think you have to do something 100 times for it to become a new habit. So I used to do that, have the phone off all day on a Sunday and just kind of allow that time. Like we do workshops on creativity. And I find actually leaving time to be bored is when you have the best kind of those aha moments. I think we've lost the kind of art of just being bored and, you know, dozing. I love Michael Harding, and he was saying, you know, like years ago, people just staring into the fire. That was like a meditation for people. And we've kind of lost contact, I think, with just the nature around us, our surroundings, our home, the environment, you know, the animals around us. And I think you can feel like you're disconnected from people, inverted commas, but you realize having the phone off for a day, I've absolutely missed nothing, but I feel way better about myself. So even Sunday morning now, I kind of building kind of, you know, a nice breakfast and have some time for creativity, whatever that is. It could be writing, painting, drawing, a jigsaw. We actually started inspiration from Meg's 1,000-piece jigsaw, and it's so hard, but like we've been working on that over the last number of weeks, and that's kind of like what we do on a Sunday. So it is a challenge, Margaret, but it takes time, and also you have to get used to being bored again. You remember those like summer holidays, like when you just sat in a wall with your friend staring across the road? And like, you know, I think
Yeah.
we've lost contact with that we have to be doing that sense of hence if you're doing something. Stimulation, actually, sorry, is the word I'm looking for. We're just so overstimulated as well, even by the drinks we have, you know, whether it's caffeine, you know, sugar, all of these things. And one of the questions there was kind of like addictive behavior. But when you think about any addiction, it's kind of taking you out of your present. So like whether that's eating, doom scrolling, whatever it is. But once you have a bit of insight actually into kind of go, actually, what am I really doing here? What am I avoiding? And sometimes it's just avoiding boredom. But like I found like in those moments of boredom, actually, you might just get that insight going, God, I used to love cycling. God, I used to love badminton, like whatever it is. The Olympics are on at the moment. And I think as well, that's kind of a positive side potentially of social media, like looking at these things give us these little sparks of imagination. What could I be doing else with my time? So thanks, Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when we were talking about it earlier in the week, you just popped that into my head, Eileen. So thanks for that. As part of our meaning and empowerment workshop, there is that resource, that little worksheet it's like dials of a clock that gives you all the hours of the day, and you can complete them in terms of this. I love the kind of dichotomy of them. Is one is what am I actually doing, and how would I like to spend my time? So how am I spending my time? And I remember, you know, years ago foreseeing that and kind of looking at it, and that was a light bulb moment for me. So my piece would be just, you don't necessarily have to turn off your phone, because there's some things that you do need to know, you know, loved ones texting, that kind of stuff, but like just turn your notifications off from your social media. But it is that FOMO piece, you know, the fear of missing out. I want to go through a couple of responses here, and then what I'd like to do be kind of think about specifically, Niamh, what are the mental health issues arising from something like doom scrolling or that obsessive behavior around social media? So I'll come to you in a second, but I just want to pull these out first. So again, coming back in terms of those words that keep coming out today: habit, boredom, you know, creativity, finding those moments where you can be creative. Scrolling can become a habit. We don't know we are doing it half the time. Absolutely. We are not mindful of the time spent looking through apps and social media. Absolutely. It's the rabbit hole where you can just, you know, as Bag said, you have the the movie on that you're watching, and then suddenly it's over and it's like, where did that what happened there? Liz, Mags, you're mentioned again. I did the same as Mags when I realized how much I was using the phone which started during my diagnosis of a serious illness. I'm sorry to hear that, Liz. The weekend I don't go on social media, a bit like Eileen, your Sundays. I have limited my day hours and I leave my phone in the car when I have appointments and bring a book again. Books, love them. We are too contactable since mobile phones. We can expect others to answer immediately or feel we should. I was lucky in my job when working, we were not allowed phones or personal calls unless it was urgent. And I know Mike O'Neill's a great one in terms of phone calls, and if the phone rings, this is my time. I'll choose when to answer. I don't know if you want to, because I just think that's really good insight, Liz.
Yeah, and I suppose just you know, when we're talking about what can help and what, you know, what actions can we take, and I suppose, as I would have often said here on different webinars around, you know, either, you know, speaking about mental illness or anxiety or how can we cope, and we all do different odd things maybe in behaviours, and as I said, well, if it's not illegal or you're not harming anyone, if whatever you're doing is helping you or enhancing your life, you know, or it's helping you with your recovery, whatever way it looks, keep doing it, you know. But if it's becoming a negative and it's impacting negatively, you know, where your behavior is, because I go home and I say, I have a phone, and unless I need to find out something, I will look it up, you know. But my phone, as I say, I put it in the same spot, and then I bring that phone to bed because I use it as an alarm clock. And sometimes when that phone rings, I don't even, well, every time, to be honest, when my phone rings, and so when you can look at, now I don't know if you get pop-ups or notifications or what way social media, so it's looking for notice, you know, I want your attention, I want your attention. In the same way, when my phone rings, I never answer it, you know, and people at home will say, why don't you answer your phone? Well, I said, whoever is phoning me, they're ready to speak to me and have a conversation with me. But they're making an assumption I'm ready to speak to them, you know. So I will return the call at any given time when it suits me, because now I am ready. I'm making time. I know who this individual is, and I can prepare for it. So everything is on my terms. And I suppose another brief one was a guy I know one time, and I met him once, again, one Sunday, and again, I'm a fan of reading Sunday newspapers, and so is he. And he says, I just read this amazing article, he says, on whatever Sunday newspaper it was. He said, and it was a full page written by a psychologist talking about the importance of switching off from technology, you know, and doing what he called mindful walking. So where you're not listening to an audiobook, you're not on your phone, you're not listening to music, and that you become, you know, this is so the benefits from it, start taking notice of, you know, what's going on around you. And he looked at me and he burst out laughing. And he said, because he said, I've just read this full page. And he looked at me and all he said was, sure, isn't that what we call going for a walk? And it was as simple as that, you know.
And that is it. Maybe we're just overcomplicating just, you know, what should be just, you know, experiences that we're used to. Thanks, Mike, and thanks for coming in on that, because I know you're very boundaried around stuff like that, and I think sometimes people are maybe possibly fearful because if they don't respond, will the person ring again? Maybe it's something important, or maybe they'll feel you know, that I'm just being, you know, I'm not being nice, or I'm, you know, I'm being difficult. And I think that's really important around the boundaries piece.
Yeah, and I think it's really important again, because again, like we say, we're all working in the mental health services here, and it's one of the things with the team here, you know, and I do it myself, but it's that right to disconnect, that nobody gets an email from me or a phone call from me out of hours, out of respect for the job you do. And when your day is done, your day is done. And I have that same approach for me. 5 o'clock on the button, my work phone switched off, because I'm not there. I'm not there to meet other people's needs. That's not my purpose or function in life. You know, I'm out for me. It might sound selfish, but I have to take care of myself. And again, but with the team as well. But it is that thing around who's in charge. And if you can ask yourself that question, you know, honestly, and answer it honestly, you know, who's in charge of, you know, your activity on a phone? Yeah, I think then you know what if you do or do not have to do something. You know?
Absolutely, Mike, and thanks for sharing that. And it is that boundary piece. And I think what's really interesting is we started doom scrolling, but now we've kind of gone into that general communication piece and the use of phones, because I don't think you can really, because the phone is like, it provides the opportunity. You know, it's such ease of access that's probably why, you know, you can't doom scroll a newspaper, really. You know,
you just turn the page.
You could try exactly. But it'd be quite expensive too if you don't buy all certain newspapers. But that's what it's like. Niamh, I will come to you on that point in a second, but I just want to bring in Ellen's point because I think it's important. Some people need their phone for medical reasons. So, for example, a sensor for monitoring blood sugars, for example, diabetes type 1. Absolutely. And I suppose it's just having that healthy approach. Turn off your notifications that you don't need, or delete apps that you don't use, or, you know, just that cleansing, that digital cleansing. But again, it goes back, I suppose, to what Mike was saying of being in control, getting the information that you need when you need it, rather than being bombarded and overwhelmed by all of this messaging that, you know, you haven't really asked for, but yet you found yourself maybe in. Sometimes there's groups that they feel like people are shouting at you. That's just my experience. I used to be on social media quite a lot, but in the last 6 years, I completely disconnected. And because I knew it wasn't doing me any good, because I was going into, you know, areas that really I didn't want to go into. But anyway, Niamh, just again, I wanted to, we've only got 10 minutes. This goes so fast, but I just want to kind of come into that from the clinical point of view. When do you know, when should you basically take action around things like this? Because we're all guilty of it, you know, but when does it become a problem? And when it does, what can we do about it?
Okay. And yeah, I guess, like you said, we all do it. We all, you know, go on our phones and might spend too much time on our phones, to a greater or lesser extent. With the exception of Mike, of course, he doesn't. But so yeah, it's something we all do. And I suppose, I know I'm like a broken record now, but I guess it's noticing how much firstly, how much time, how much is it impacting on your ability to live the life you want to live, whatever that might look like. But is it impacting on your functioning day to day, like time wise? And then noticing how much of an impact it's having on your mood. I guess, like I said, it exacerbates maybe if we are prone to experiencing anxiousness or depression or just mental health difficulties in general. It can exacerbate that. It can reinforce negative thinking. It also, one of the major things that I would see clinically, and again, I would have experienced myself, is that the doom scrolling can happen at nighttime a lot. That's when people, you know, maybe trouble sleeping, or as a method of getting off to sleep, people can scroll on their phones, and then they're, I suppose, being bombarded with or seeking out whatever it is, kind of negative or threatening or scary or upsetting stories. And I guess we know that by reading about and looking at images of distressing things, that impacts like cortisol, adrenaline, you know, it's releasing those stress hormones in the body. And then that's exacerbating the anxiety or the distress. And also it's reducing our likelihood of getting to sleep. So it's impacting on how much sleep we're getting then as well. And I suppose when we're sleep deprived or not getting enough, our ability to deal with and tolerate life goes down. So I guess looking at those things, how is it impacting my mood when I do engage in it? How much is it impacting my functioning? Like, how much is it getting in the way of me doing what I want to do or what I need to do? You know, and need to do might be spending time with kids, or it might be work, or it might be just taking care of myself or my home. Sleep, how much is it impacting on sleep? And then taken action. I think like Mags, Eileen, Mike, yourself, we have all mentioned different ways kind of already of taking action. And like you've said, and one of the comments was saying, sometimes we can't completely disconnect, or we can't turn off our phone, or we can't put it in another room. We need to be accessible. So I guess one of the major things, and Mags made a really kind of good point about this, like being aware and being conscious of. I think that's the biggest thing. So being aware of it, being conscious of it, starting to notice how much time we're spending on our phones, and then putting in time limits, like, you know, putting on an alarm, or you can get apps to kind of, you know, once you've gone over 15 minutes, it will alert you or let you know. So kind of limiting the time, because it is important as well to stay kind of up to date on what's going on, or we might want to feel like, you know, we might want to keep up with world events. But we don't need to do that all the time. We don't need to constantly keep up with it. So time limits, putting limits on it. And then one of the kind of, I suppose it is a habit as well. Like we just reach for our phone, you know, in boredom or last thing before we go to sleep. And so replacing one habit with another habit can be helpful, instead of just saying, I'm not going to do that anymore. So it might be kind of having magazines or having books to hand. So it might be when the urge to go for the phone, it might be reaching for the magazine instead, or reaching for a book instead, or even, you know, a podcast or something, or, you know, just introducing different ways of maybe meeting that need, whether it is boredom or distraction or whatever it is, but meeting that need in different ways than scrolling through upsetting or distressing stories.
Absolutely, Niamh. Yeah, sorry, Niamh, go ahead.
When my mouth gets dry, that's when I need to stop off.
No. I suppose we're only 4 minutes out, but what kind of popped into my head is that idea of just like, you know, do something, you know, take action, and connecting. I know it all started, Mike, with those talks about facts and feelings, but just connecting with your how's this making me feel? And yeah, and I suppose anybody who's listening today to this, please don't feel guilty if you have these behaviors, because we've all had them and we all continue to have them, and there's times we'll feel in there. So it's just a question of adjusting and awareness. I just want to check, because I think there's another comment there. This is lovely, and thank you so much. Sincere thanks to you all for such an interesting, thought-provoking webinar. I found it very beneficial, with a great variety of helpful comments, suggestions. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. And thank you to all those who attended. We're not finishing just yet, but I just Eileen, if you wouldn't mind just putting the feedback link in, I'd really appreciate it. Ryan's just said, and you know what, Ryan, absolutely, I'm with you now, whether you said this in earnest, but I agree, people should learn knitting. Listen, believe me, you have to, especially if you're following a pattern, you really do need to take notice and to pay attention. That's the other thing, full attention. This is a really good one. Putting my phone on airplane mode every night and picking up a book helps me sleep better at night. Absolutely. And a smiley face from Ryan, and a smiley face right back at you, Ryan, and for all those who have contributed today. It's been a great conversation. I'm going to ask the panelists before we go. I do want to share just a little bit of signposting for you, but while I'm getting that organized, I'm just going to come to each of the panelists so that they can start to say their goodbyes. But in the meantime, just look in the chat function, because Eileen very kindly put in a feedback form. We look at all our feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. It's really important to us, because we want to make sure that we get this right. So yeah, Mags, do you want to say your goodbyes there, and maybe a final thought?
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Yeah, I found this very interesting, and I suppose I learned more as well. And yeah, I suppose it really came at a good time for me, that light bulb moment. So yeah, I picked up a few pointers there as well. And yeah, it's just changing my habit. It's just changing an hour or 2 hours at night, find something else to do.
Brilliant,
Yeah,
Mags. And
maybe-
that's it.
Yeah.
It's the habit, you know, and sort of, as Lee was saying, replacing one habit with another. Mike, do you want to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, just two comments. One is, if I live till I'm 80, I have 4,000 weekends. Okay? So I'm already running out of road, you know, so like there's not an infinite number of weekends in a lifetime. So use your time wisely. And, you know, and sometimes like we're always looking for stuff. But I suppose, to quote Patrick Kavanagh, one of our miserable poets in Ireland, but I love the line that he used: "The man who knows his own half acre knows the world."
That's lovely, Mike. That's a definite mic drop. And thank you for that. Eileen, do you want to say your goodbyes there?
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed today. And I suppose just one thing before everybody goes to look up. I was doing a bit of research on micro-learning. So it's just a different way of actually approaching time spent on social media. So I suppose just something for everyone to look up, spending specific amount of time learning something that you actually want to learn for yourself, and then putting a limit on that. So yeah, really enjoyed today. Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant, Eileen. That's absolutely brilliant. And again, it goes with recovery education, micro learning. That's fantastic. Niamh, just if you want to say your goodbye there.
Yeah, just I'll say a very quick goodbye and thank you very much. It was great to be part of it. The discussion and great comments and questions kind of coming in as well. It's nice to have such a engagement from people listening. And I won't add anything else. I think I spoke enough there. So
Niamh, and thank you. Look, we really appreciate. We know how busy you are, and I think it's just given that different perspective. And thanks to all of the panelists. I think what I love about these is that we can have honest and safe conversations about interesting and challenging topics. And we can only do that with the engagement from the people who attend. So thank you for that. But don't go just yet, because a bit of signposting to do. But I just want to say, Liz there just said in the Q&A, thanks for today's interesting topic. And thanks, Liz, to you as well for all of your contributions. So I just want to, I suppose, just give you a little bit of what we're doing and what's, if you've just discovered us, maybe you have. We're obviously facilitating, and you might meet Eileen and Mags again at our recovery education workshops online. So we're looking at anxiety and also resilience and depression. And we finally end out the month with the positivity that is creativity for well-being, which is always a brilliant one. And again, if you're looking at something to replace maybe that doom scrolling, that would be a great one to attend. We're also in person in the community, so we have Journaling for Wellbeing there in September, and Journaling for Wellbeing in September in the Edna O'Brien Library. And thinking about creatives, poor Edna passed away this week. Condolences to her family. She was an amazing writer. And also we're in the City Library there in Limerick. Journaling for Wellbeing is there as well. And we're then, again, libraries. We love libraries. Foynes Library back in October. If you're looking for anything that in terms of workshops, whether online or in person, please do go to our Eventbrite page. But we also have, and you'll get this actually, anyone who's attended will get this in their learner pack, self-paced learning opportunities, a bit like Eileen was saying about micro-learning. Well, this is an additional type of learning, and probably micro-learning example here would be the Introducing Occupational Therapy Guide. If it's something that you're interested in, maybe you're attending the service and you're thinking, occupational therapy, could that help me in my recovery from mental health challenges? It's a really nice short guide, only about 15 minutes. But then we've got the larger one of understanding acute, sorry, just move this out of the way, understanding acute mental health services for families, carers and supporters. It's quite a long course, but even if you just do the first piece on it, there's some fantastic videos there that takes you right through both ENIS and the UHL acute psychiatric units. And finally, one of our, it's been a fantastic thing to work on, is my perinatal self-care workbook. We just launched the audiobook version of that. Now, we were talking about audiobooks earlier, and again, it's a scan and go, and you can download, and you can either stream it or download to your phone. And then next month, we'd love to have you back again. We have My Mental Health Getting Ready for Winter. I know it's that word winter, but it's there, it's coming, and we're going to get ready for it. So, you know, come along. We'd love to have you there. Finally, just a mention of our partner in these webinars, and that's Mental Health Ireland. And that is Claire Flynn, who is the development officer for this region. So if you want to get in touch with Claire, her details are there. And we are all across the socials. After saying all that about social media, we have a presence, and we're there. So just look for @Midwest Aries. And then, of course, we have our wellness panel where we have long form podcasts of this webinar. So you'll be able to hear all the webinars that's went before. Yeah, and we just got one last comment from Rachel before we close. And Rachel said, thanks for today. Such an important topic that affects everyone. Take care and all the best. Same to you, Rachel. And wherever you are, whatever you do, you know, ban the word guilty, because we're all guilty of it, whatever it is, and have the best day you can, and just be kind to yourself. And yeah, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.